314 for a shooting at Century Theaters. They're saying somebody's shooting in the auditorium.
Roger, keep your fires west of the smoke. You're cleared hot. An officer hit. Send me the world.
Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again.
Welcome to Tactical Tangents.
Welcome back to Tactical Tangents. This is Mike. This episode is brought to you by Mantis. Mantis is a firearms training system that tracks the movement in your gun so you can step up your performance with good data and feedback. Not only does it help you stay accountable and make training more enjoyable and cost-effective, it also works in dry fire so you can train at home. I swear by dry fire training, and I use the Mantis every single time. If your shooting will have real-life consequences, use the Mantis to take your shooting to the next level. You can find them at mantisx.com.
And this is Jim. This episode is also brought to you by Drip Drop Oral Rehydration Solution. Drip Drop was formulated by a doctor for quick absorption of water and electrolytes into the parts of your body that need it. You can find it on dripdrop.com or even on Amazon. And if you're military or law enforcement and you're working where it's hot out, have your supply guy buy it for you. It's available in bulk on GSA Advantage and through the National Stock Number System. It is getting hot out. The work doesn't stop just because it's hot out. You got to get out there and work out. You got to get out there and get the job done. Get you some watermelon flavor and get cranking.
Speaking of working out, Jim, we did an episode a little while back on the first steps in fitness. The premise of which was go to the gym, eat less, drink less beer, and maybe go for a run every once in a while, right?
And I have to imagine that a lot of people who listen to that episode are like, no, that's totally wrong. You have to do this one program that I heard once. And it's like, no, the fundamentals never change. The fundamentals are calories in, calories out.
Yeah.
And you got to work out. You got to actually do it, right? And it's a process, and you have to kind of trust the process. So that it will get you started. But there are limits to my background and Mike's background. And so we thought we would bring in an expert.
That's right. We wanted to build on that episode for a long time. And so there I was scrolling the grams one day, and I saw...
That's Instagram. That's not grams of cocaine, in case you're wondering.
Yeah, the Insta. And I came across a guy that was doing underwater swimming, which immediately caught my attention. And turns out Allan Phillips, who's here with us today, is also a licensed physical therapist, also an author, a triathlete, an Army officer, a kettlebell enthusiast, because his handle on Instagram is the Kettlebell Doc. And when it comes
have certain interests, they're the kettlebell.
Yeah. So when it comes to PT, both in the sense of physical training and also physical therapy, this is kind of the guy. So Allan, thanks for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be here. And it's almost kind of surreal because I was just listening to the podcast over the weekend, catching up on some episodes. It's like, wow, these are like the guys actually right in front of me here. So it's kind of cool.
I listened to a couple others that you've guested on as well to try to get up to speed. And, we always want to kind of bring a new spin or new flavor that people haven't done before. But at the same time, like some of this stuff, going back to what Jim was saying, it's so fundamental and important. Like anyone that is going through those first steps in fitness and starting to train, and anyone who is real serious about it, is going to get those like nagging injuries and the strains and sprains. And my recent challenge has been like just age catching up with me. And I'm realizing now that coming up on 13 years sitting in a police car with my hips all, off kilter to one side because of my holster sitting into my seat and stuff, that like just getting out of bed and getting out of the car and bending down to pick stuff up and kit is getting old. Like I'm getting old and that's getting old. So I think there's some good lessons to be taken from that.
So can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got here as far as becoming a physical trainer? How'd you end up down that path among all of the other paths that you looked at?
Yeah, so I would go too far back because I could take a whole episode, but going back to about 10 years ago, so I was actually a prosecutor, a city prosecutor in Tucson here, so working in the legal field, and then kind of by accident I got into the personal training, strength coach world of things. I was doing that on the side. Essentially, just started out just working out with some people who were said like, "Hey, you look like you're kind of in shape. You can help me out a little bit." And then eventually that got more formal, and then eventually that led to doing some more continuing education courses. And in the process of that, I got to interface with quite a few high level rehab people And that experience was pretty interesting, because my experience with physical therapy and rehab, like way back in the day when I was younger, it was pretty much just here's an ice pack and here's some ultrasound and go rest a month and then it'll be better.
Yeah.
In my world, it's Motrin and water, as you might have heard.
Right, exactly.
That's good.
Walk it off. Change your socks.
Yeah, just rub some dirt on it. But seeing that the field of rehabilitation, sports rehabilitation, had advanced so far in the last 10, 15, 20 years, that was pretty inspiring to see, like, oh wow, I kind of want to do this for real. And so eventually just went back to local community college, took a bunch of my prerequisites that I either never took to begin with or had expired because I've been out of school for a few years, and then eventually went off to PT school and graduated a few years back, and and then here we are now.
Yeah. So how does it, I think that's probably a good introduction into some of this injury rehab and injury prevention stuff, which is how do you draw a balance between, I mean, there are times where certainly you've got some injury that you need to take some time off, right? Like you need to rest, you need to recover, maybe just some stretching and that sort of thing. Ice and Motrin might actually play a significant role there. And then certain things you can kind of train through. And I don't necessarily mean just fighting through the pain so much as, maybe there are some complementary exercises and, yoga and some rehab stuff that you can build into your program that will help you with it. Like how do you find the balance with your patients?
It's always tough, and I'm still figuring it out myself. It's one of the toughest things as an active person, as an athlete, to do is to determine, is this an injury, or am I just sore from being active and working out? And it's difficult for everyone, and it's different for everyone as well. Generally, if we were to come up with some big picture rules, if something is having lingering pain or discomfort longer than what you'd be used to, then that's one benchmark. Another thing is if it's extremely localized, like the difference between you go and you work out and you're kind of sore like all over, just like say you're doing a chest day or shoulder day, you feel like your abs are sore still too. Whereas if you're doing a chest day and shoulder day and it's like, just my left shoulder hurts like right here and it's persisting for a while, that's going to be a little different.
I know them feels.
It's funny you mentioned that. Recent deployment, I'm doing a lot of working out, trying to stay fit and use my time wisely. When I was on the trip, had some very localized back pain right around my left kidney, and I'm like, maybe I have a kidney stone, and I didn't want to have a kidney stone while I'm deployed. Obviously, that would be problematic. And I mentioned it to a couple of my coworkers, and like 3 other guys, like, I think I have one too. And they're like, well, damn. And one guy literally passed his kidney stone. Like, he was like, that was character building. As far as I know, I just needed to do more stretching after deadlifts, squats, and stuff. But it's funny how hard, especially as you get older, you really have to stop and ask yourself, am I hurt or am I injured? And sometimes it gets real fuzzy. Or am I sick in that case? So as far as making the decision to go get help, there are all kinds of specifically athletic field medical providers now. How do I make the decision? Should I go to the chiropractor or should I go talk to my general practitioner physician? And when should I go find a physical trainer? And like, how do I make that decision, or podiatrist or whatever? Like, how do I choose a specialist, or do I need to?
Yeah, so I'll start with the easy one. So if it seems like there's a reason to believe that it's not sort of musculoskeletal, then you definitely want to seek out a physician or PA or a nurse practitioner, something along those lines. If there's a reason to believe that it's not muscle and bone related, because particularly things like like you're talking about the kidney stones, things in the abdominal area. It could be back pain, or it could be kidney stone. It could be something else more serious. So if it's something on those lines, definitely good to get it checked out by someone with the appropriate training to actually fix those types of issues. Now, to kind of plug physical therapy in a way, we are doctoral level providers now. And there is, in pretty much every state, there is some form of direct access, which basically means you can go see a physical therapist, a doctor of physical therapy, without needing a referral of any type. And so we're trained to, number one, even if you are a little unsure of, okay, is this in the musculoskeletal lane or is it perhaps something else? And it could be in both. So we have you can go and immediately get care instead of, say, like, back in the day, you'd have to go to your primary, you wait a week for that,
then you referral.
Right, then you get a referral, then 3 weeks later you're either better, which is great, or you've done nothing for 3 weeks, and then the scarring has taken place, or you haven't moved it, and then you've started to build some, for lack of a better term, muscle memory around trying to
compensate or something.
Avoid that pain. Yeah, exactly. And so we have a saying that motion is lotion, and so generally movement is movement is going to be often therapeutic, and that's something that a PT and many chiropractors who have some kind of movement-based training or sports-based training can do to help you, number one, find ways to move in a healthy way that can help overcome the pain, but also have certain manual skills. Whether it's in the chiropractic field, it's adjustment. And PT, we have different soft tissue skills. We have different spinal skills that we can also use. So to kind of summarize it all together, if it is something that might be medical, kind of the thing that could musculoskeletal, then go get it checked out by a doc or PA or someone along those lines. If it is something muscle related, muscle and bone related, then you can go see a PT or some other rehab professional with the training to deal with that.
Yeah. And I want to come back to some of the injury rehab stuff and general physical therapy stuff closer to the end, but I do want to talk a little bit about your running background. You've obviously done a lot of marathons and triathlons and stuff like that. You mentioned that you have a real active background, and one of the things that I think has come a long way, maybe in some ways, but also is adding a lot of confusion, is all the types of running shoes out there. And this is something that I personally have made some changes in my own style of running. Can you talk about just running shoes and running in general, some basic fundamental knowledge that people need to have if they're just getting into running for real?
Yeah, so with running shoes, the thinking right now, and it's actually based on a lot of research out of the military, is that the best running shoe for you is what feels the best. If you've been around running for a while, you probably remember the old days when it's like, okay, if you overpronate, you put you in a motion control shoe automatically. If you have a high arch, then you'd be in a neutral shoe. So that kind of typology, it still exists, and it can be useful as a starting point, because there's certainly a gazillion different places where you can start. So it's not a worthless classification. But in general, what feels the best is generally what's going to be the best for you. And just kind of to summarize the research, essentially at each of the major services boot camps, they took thousands of recruits, 1,000 candidates, and gave about half of them just a regular old neutral shoe, just straight down the middle. And then they gave the other half, they typed them into, okay, if you had a foot this shape, then you'd get a motion control. If you have this shape, you get the stability. And then they basically found that those who were in the neutral shoe actually had lower injury rates than those who were given the shoe based on their foot type. So that's kind of the thinking now, is that what feels good is generally what's best. A lot of people pick on color and other kinds of things, but feel is generally going to be your best guide in terms of picking a shoe.
I remember shortly after the motion control stuff, there was also the minimalist movement, right? With the 5-finger shoes and that sort of thing. And it's funny, that was crazy popular for like 2 years. And I can't remember the last time I saw a set of the 5-finger shoes. Do you run in those? Do you recommend going down that path?
I think it's definitely worthwhile for like daily use. In terms of for actually running, there may be some value, but most people don't. Most people go at it too fast, or they make the change too abruptly. So that's probably the biggest pitfall there. But definitely, I always encourage people to go barefoot as much as possible in their normal lives and wear the most minimalist shoe possible when you're going to the gym or even just walking around or being around the house. So that's kind of where I fall in the minimalist movement right now.
Right on. So on the shoe thing, last weekend, wife and I went into town, went to the big mall, and went to the fancy running shoe store, and she was really excited to get the running shoe store diagnostic thing. They put her feet on a machine and analyzed it and stuff. Do you see any value in having a store do that, or is that like snake oil? Like what you're saying, is it just go with what you feel like, or should someone actually look at your feet?
I think there's value in using that as a starting point. Because you walk in and there's a wall of 200 shoes and you have no idea where to start. So certainly, if that can help you pick a place to start if you don't know where you want to start. Now, in terms of using it to say, okay, yeah, your foot is shaped like this, then okay, this is the shoe for you, absolutely. Then yeah, I think that's a bit snake oil if you want to make that conclusion.
Right. It's funny that we talked about the minimalist thing, and I transitioned. I was always a stability shoe guy, and I went to the minimalist thing, and I had to start and stop a little bit because I started too fast. And I still wear these Merrell trail gloves that are basically a minimalist barefoot. They're not the 5 toes thing like you're talking about, Jim, but they're just there's no cushioning or support in there, and it is an adjustment, and I've personally had a lot more luck with that. But I think it's because to your point, Alan, is that I've been a lot more conscious about my form and the way I'm landing on my feet and some of those things that, I could probably go back to a regular shoe, and I don't know that it would make much of a difference because I've adjusted my own mentality on how I deal with running, and not overdoing it, stuff like that.
Yeah, and the thing too with a minimalist shoe, there's kind of a trade-off with when you take away some of the meat on the bottom of the shoe, you take away some of that stack, which is essentially how much higher the heel is than the toe. You take some of that away, there's going to be generally more stress placed on like the calves and Achilles tendon. But one of the trade-offs that might be great for some people, and then perhaps this is the case for yourself, is it allows your body to sort of work things out in the way by giving you more feel instead of, if you're in the motion control shoe, you pretty much have to land like a certain way, the way the shoe tells you to,
or it will fix you.
Right, exactly. and then the shoe or the foot's obviously connected to the rest of the body. So if you make the foot land a certain way, then it's going to have a chain of effects up the body, can affect your knees and hips and everything. So if you're in tune with your body and your calves and Achilles can deal with the change in the level of drop, then going more minimalist certainly can be, in a sense, physically and mentally liberating in a way. Yeah,
I think the biggest change. Well, one, I don't have to buy new running shoes every 6 months or a year like I did before. But two, it taught me how to be more of a mid and forefoot striker instead of a heel striker. That was probably the biggest, I guess, paradigm shift just in my own running style.
That's a good point. Running form.
Yeah.
What kind of running form should I have? How do I become like a good runner?
Yeah. Yeah, so running forms, that's another one of those crazy topics that can be very, very polarizing for people on the back in the, so from a historical perspective, back in the day, it was just kind of like, okay, just go run however you run. And then kind of in the, I'd say late 90s, early 2000s, when triathlon started to get big and you started attracting more sort of adult onset athletes who were getting into triathlon and who really either hadn't had a running background or had been 20 years or whatever since they had run in high school or in youth. Then they started to take the approach like they used with swimming. Swimming is very technical, whereas started to take that approach to running. So say you need to run with this certain way, this certain method. The pose method was really big back then. And then you had the motion control shoe period, I guess you could say, and then we had the minimalists swinging the pendulum the opposite direction, now we're started coming to more of like a holistic view of run in a way that is best suited for your body. Now, in terms of just generalized advice overall for running form, the heel strike often gets a bad rap, and it can be bad. Plenty of research showing that a heel strike can be worse on the knees, worse on the hips, and can cause shin splints and all that bad stuff. But I do think it's important to discriminate between a heel strike in which your heel is landing out in front of the center of mass and a heel strike in which you're landing underneath yourself. Because there's actually, if you break down the video, I actually posted this on my running group. I might have posted on my IG, maybe not last week. But there were, so one of the biomechanics labs, one of the big biomechanics labs, they took some pictures of the foot strikes at the Olympic trials. So basically guys and gals running, sub 5-minute miles for 6 miles. And they're all wearing track spikes, which are very minimalist shoes in and of themselves. And most of them, at least half of them, were landing in a heel strike. But the distinction there is that they're all still landing underneath themselves. Whereas you see the regular person jogging down the street on the sidewalk, they're heel striking, but they're landing like they're overstriding, they're landing way out in front of themselves. Right. And then so every single time your foot's hitting the ground, it's like you're putting on the brakes. And so number one, it slows it down, and number two, it's just a lot more force and
kind of jarring to the system.
Exactly.
The picture that comes into my head when you describe that, I picture like someone's heel way out in front of them at full force, just jamming into the ground. I could feel that in my knees.
I can feel that. Yeah. Yep.
You mentioned shin splints, and there's a number of injuries that anyone that's been running for any amount of time, shin splints, plantar fasciitis, just general knee and hip pain,
tendonitis, sprains, strains.
Yeah, just general injuries relating to running. Can you talk about some general advice for not only preventing those things, but also dealing with them when they pop up?
So the best prevention is definitely going to be a progressive approach to building up your running. It's obviously easier said than done. Because most people, especially in the tactical communities, are go-getters, and it's like, okay, I'm going to run, I'm going to make my running better, so I'm just going to go out and get after it right now. So there's
guilty.
Yep.
And then also just looking at sort of the infrastructure of the way the tactical world is set up. You have mandatory tests on certain dates, or someone wants to ship to boot camp. But a recruiter says, okay, you're shipping on this date. We gotta get your PT test at a certain level before then. It's like, okay, you got 6 weeks, you got 8 weeks or whatever. Okay. And, and kid gets up from PlayStation or sitting and then, hasn't run since elementary school gym class and now needs to run 1.5.
I feel personally attacked by this. I haven't had to work out. I have worked out, obviously, but I haven't had to take a PT test since COVID. And now they're publishing test dates like, hey, yours is coming up in 6 months or 3 months, whatever. And I'm like, ooh, I better get that track.
Time to study.
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely a progression is going to be the most important thing. But that said, there's still plenty of runners who have been running for many years and are already within the progression. If we run pretty much every day or 5 days a week, whatever, and who get injuries too. So that's when the treatment piece comes into it. I think probably the most important thing is mindset, and it kind of goes back to the whole, am I injured or am I sore kind of thing, where it's you don't need to be a hero. It's better to back off for the day and live to fight another day, because that one extra mile that you do, if you say, oh, I'm just going to tough it out, that might set you back 6-8 weeks, as opposed to if you said, you know what, I'm gonna call it for today and go do some cross training, go do some stretching or whatever, and just recognize.
I think that is a key point. We try to talk about that in the Intro to Fitness episode. Is your end state fitness is going to be better if you keep working out and don't get injured and take yourself out of working out for 6 weeks. So I just want to really emphasize what you just said. That was important. If your fitness is a big deal to you, have the discipline to do the things that keep you from getting hurt.
Yeah.
Because getting you hurt is going to get you out of fitness.
Yeah, I say that the most, well, I didn't say it because someone else said it, but the most important athletic ability is availability.
Yeah.
If you're not,
I like that.
if you're not available to perform, then it doesn't really matter what else you can do.
And there's a maturity component to that, right? It's like, and this is something that I'm dealing with, as I mentioned in the beginning, like as you creep into your 30s and you've been doing this for 5 or 10 years, any of these careers where you do them long term and you start to realize that like just getting out of bed in the morning sucks. Getting in and out of my car sucks. Like I'll be at SWAT training on any given Tuesday for, 6 or 8 hours wearing kit. And that sucks at the end of the day. And it takes a little bit of like discipline to say, okay, I need to like take some time, do some stretching. I just invested in a Theragun. That thing is awesome. So that's actually a good, I guess a good follow-up point is, what about like that general mobility stuff? What do you think about stretching and yoga and some of those things?
So I think they're all good. I think the most important thing is that you do them. And because most people, I think this day and age, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who says, oh, it's, stretching and mobility is dumb or anything like that.
I have heard things like you have to stretch after you run instead of before, stuff like that, or it needs to be, you have to warm up before you stretch. Can you speak to kind of that? Usually it's not don't stretch at all.
Yeah. Like
it's usually
static and dynamic
caveat.
stretching is also the other. Static versus dynamic stretching and warm-ups.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that in there too? Let's just pile on the questions. Let's just keep them.
Yeah, I got 1,000 questions. So.
Yeah, I feel like I'm like at a board or something. Something you go at a parade rest here.
Yes, obviously.
These key points, they're all there's guidelines. There's no set rules for anything. So if so the thinking for a while was you shouldn't static stretch before an activity. So generally, yes, something that is more dynamic, something that gets the tissue temperature warmed up before the activity, that's going to be better. But there's nothing necessarily wrong with going out and doing a static stretch. You watch the Olympics with all the the gymnasts and acrobats performing those types of very dynamic movements, and you see a lot of them laying on the floor doing static stretches. Well, none of those people are anything remotely close to weak.
Or normal.
Yeah.
And so you'd be hard pressed to say that they've had a negative effect on their strength and power. I think where a lot of the sort of the hesitance against static stretching before activity, there was a lot of research in the last, say, 10, 15 years that sort of said that static stretching can hurt rate of force development, power and strength before an activity. There's since been reviews done on some of that literature more recently, and it actually found that if you look at the actual protocols of some of those studies, they were having people do like 5 minutes of or 20 or even up to 20 minutes of a static stretch before going into like some bench press or a deadlift, and then yeah, of course you're going to be less powerful if you do something like that. But what we have found is that if let's say you do some static stretching, because you like it before an activity, or maybe it's something that you've had a previous injury and you found that, hey, these particular static stretches are helpful for me to feel confident in this muscle or this joint being able to move without pain. As long as you're pairing it with something, that does hit that active component, mainly getting the tissue temperature warm, mainly taking the joints through the ranges of motion that are needed to accomplish the activity that you're going to perform. As long as you're checking those boxes, there's nothing inherently wrong with doing static stretching beforehand. Now, generally, static stretching, the conventional wisdom is do it more afterward, and that kind of makes sense too, because a warm muscle is just going to be easier to stretch than a cold one. So you're simply going to get more out of your stretching if you do it when you're already warm than if you do it when you're cold.
Yeah. And to the mobility stuff, is there a particular like routine? Do you think people should follow a certain yoga routine, or is it foam rolling, or is it sitting on a lacrosse ball? What are your basic tips on mobility stuff?
Yeah, so do something. So all of those are good things. The main thing is that you really the three main things you're looking for in the warm up is number one, elevating the tissue temperature. Number two, making sure the muscles and the joints can get into and through the ranges of motion that you need for the activity that you're subsequently going to perform. Whether it's so if you're doing say a deadlift, you want to make sure your hips are good and mobile and you can actually bend forward and get into that position. If you're doing some overhead pressing, you'll want to do some work on your shoulders or thoracic spine. So that's where your foam roller would be great to for working on like your thoracic spine or working on say your lats or something like that. Lacrosse ball is often great for the hips or even some of the more intricate areas around the shoulder that a blunt object like the foam roller might not be as effective at reaching. So they're all very good things, and they all serve a similar purpose. I think, but in general, like those kind of the tools, like the foam roller, the lacrosse balls, or any of those similar massage implements, they'll be good to target kind of specific areas, whereas kind of your general movement is going to be generally just getting yourself warmed up to do something later.
Does
if you have a massager shaped like Jean-Claude Van Damme.
And kind of related to that, I see you mentioned earlier about training for the test and kind of goal setting when it comes to working out and whatever your program that you want to get on board with, whether it's heavy into running or heavy into lifting, or if you're a CrossFitter and whatever it is. I feel like a lot of people go into this and their goals might be to get big and strong, or to deadlift 900 pounds or whatever, whatever it is. But it seems like a lot of people probably neglect some of those smaller little stabilizer muscles that probably need to get. Like I've learned the hard way with an overhead shoulder injury that I had. Like rehabbing something like that involves a lot of really low weight stuff. I mean, 5 pound, little 5 pound plates that I'm doing exercises with my shoulder, or using resistance bands and stuff like that, that in the moment that it doesn't feel like it's a lot of work, like I'm getting a lot done, but having the discipline to use those things to make sure that I'm working on those little more intricate areas. Can you speak to that at all, and the importance of that, and where people tend to either neglect or overdo it?
Yeah, so I had a trainer when I was in college. He had a saying that it's important to train your go muscles, not always your show muscles. And so that's where a lot of those those like intricate things that you're talking about come into play. So generally, almost I'd say 95% of people, if not more, could work on your lateral hip muscles. So those are the ones that are responsible for you going side to side. Or if you think of exercises, if you picture like the Jane Fondas, so someone laying on their side and then lifting the leg straight up in the air, that's where you start to feel it in like your glute medius, glute minimus, the tensor fasciae lata, which is also on the side. So even with people who can squat and deadlift massive amounts of weight, those muscles can be can still be quite weak in people, just because and if your only activity is just if you live life in that sagittal plane, just that straight back and straight through, then yeah, you can probably get away with it. But if you're if you do anything that exists outside those planes, so whether even if you're running distance running, you're still making all these little micro corrections related to the terrain, where those lateral muscles in the hip are going to be very crucial to keeping your balance and keeping your alignment through your legs. And then
let me dumb this down for some of our crayon eating listeners. Not all of them, just we have a few. So there's more to going to the gym than standing in the Smith rack and doing bicep curls, right? You have to do more than that. You have to understand you have many muscles, not just the big ones, right? And many muscle groups, and some of the things that don't seem very productive in the gym are actually really, really important, right? Doing things that are going to exercise your neck and your core and your trunk, right? That's going to get you the stability that you need to do the other stuff well. Yeah. I think is where you're going with that. Is there like 2 or 3 things? If I'm walking around a gym and I'm not a big gym rat, but walking around a gym trying to figure out like what's going to get me some of what you're talking about as far as the exercises I need to do.
Yeah, so I think number one, so for the upper body, so foam rolling the upper back, thoracic spine to really open that up. There's other things you can do, but that's probably the simplest thing. That's almost like, I want to say dummy proof, but you lay on the foam roller and you feel your upper back basically opening up over it. That's a pretty fail safe one.
That's a step for getting out of bed for me. Actually,
yeah,
out of bed to the foam roller.
Yeah.
And then it's key when doing that exercise too. I see a lot of people, it's when they're laying back over the foam roller, actually doing like a complete back bend, whereas really we want to focus it on the upper back and not just the not compensating through the lower back or flaring the rib cage and those type of things. And then for the lower body, there's some different banded mobilizations for the hip. So if you can kind of picture, you hook up a big kind of thick resistance band and you get into a lunge, and then you hook it around your back leg, your back hip, and then you kind of pull the hip joint forward, this hip socket forward, and essentially separating the pelvis, so your hips from your leg bone, and there's opening up that space, because joints love space, just like any sort of tissue. The more things you can, there's a lot of good things happen when you open up joints. And just to kind of follow up, Jim, on your the summarize of kind of dumbing it down, it's kind of like these are just the basics. It's like with shooting, you work on your stance, you work on your getting a good sight picture, you work on your trigger squeeze, you do your dry firing, and all good marksmen do those things. This is like all good.
You have to get the fundamentals right to get into the more advanced stuff. Right?
Exactly.
So I'm going to segue us a little bit. You have an Army background, among other things. The Army has recently changed its PT test. And in some ways for better, some ways for worse. I imagine you have some opinions on that. Can you speak to us about the difference between training for a test, like an Army PT test or an Air Force PT test, versus tactical training as far as functional movement and functional training for the things I might need to do in a tactical environment? And does one get you the other?
So there's definitely some overlap. I mean, I think some people make the argument like, oh, we don't fight. You don't go run 2 miles in tennis shoes on the battlefield, so the 2 mile run is absolutely worthless. Or you don't do. No one ever won a battle doing push-ups or anything like that. I mean, that's just a bit of a reach. I mean, there's definitely some general strength and general endurance that comes from that. People who do well on the test are generally going to be in the upper percentiles of overall functional fitness. But does that optimize functional fitness? Absolutely not. Now, when we talk about training for the test, certainly it kind of depends on where you are. Like if you need to score a certain thing to either get the job or maintain your job, then that's you kind of need to do that before you pass go. It's
just do that. That'll get you at least in the door to learn the tactical stuff, right?
Right, sure. Exactly.
But it's also important though, and this is I think where this discussion goes is on any given day, like I might have to pick up a buddy and drag him, from behind a patrol car to whatever point of safety that I have to get to, or run up 6 flights of stairs to get to the active shooter on whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of things that my job might require of me that the test doesn't, right? And so that's the problem, I think, is making sure that our tests, that those metrics, at least on some level, relate to our job function. I think that's where this is headed, right?
Right, exactly, and that's what the Army has tried to do with with the new test. It has multiple parts to it. So the old test, for those who aren't aware, this had push-ups, sit-ups, and a 2 mile run. The new test has a trap bar deadlift. It has a med ball throw. It has a sprint drag carry where you're sprinting back and forth. You're doing some side shuffling. You're doing some carrying kettlebells, dragging a sled. They changed the push-up, the way the push-ups are done. Then there's the leg tuck, which to kind of get that your upper body strength, because for whatever reason they didn't want the pull-up in there. And then they still have a 2 mile run involved with it. And the thinking is that all of those those tasks combined together more mimic what's going on more closely in the battlefield. But a lot of it too relates to just, how's the data being used? Is it, for example, to pass that test? It's actually pretty easy, to be honest. And I'm not just saying that. Even pretty much everyone agrees that the passing score for that test is actually quite easy. Although the plank, because a lot of people were failing the leg tuck, they have a plank now where to get the minimum, you need to go for 2 minutes in front leaning rest, which actually isn't easy. Yeah. But passing the test isn't hard, but it's always going to be a balance at all levels for how much do we train for the test, how much do we train for the task. But again, it goes back to what are they using the information for, and if it's okay, you need to score really high on the test just for promotion or to get to a certain job or whatever, and then you might be taking away from the operational readiness just to get ready for the test. So a lot of it does come down to how it's being used.
Yeah. Have you seen a change in injuries since the test changed?
Yeah, so when I was in Kuwait, we saw a lot of shoulder injuries related to the leg tuck. So the leg tuck is basically you have two hands on the bar, and you basically bend your elbows to like 90 degrees and bring your knees up to hit your elbows.
So this is a podcast. You can't see his hands. The hand gesture he's making is a pole dancer hand gesture, just so you know. But
yeah, so I saw a lot of injuries for that. So it was on the old test. Pretty much most injuries are either low back from the sit-ups and shin splints, knee issues from the run. But because of the new test, it's very upper body intensive with that particular exercise. So it'd be a lot of people who would go out and it's like they're kind of panicking, like, oh man, I got to pass this test. And so going back to what we talked about before, not following any sort of progression, they just jump on the bar and just kind of try to muscle it. And it's like, okay, I didn't get it today. I'll go back and try tomorrow. Maybe I'll get it, and just keep trying, and hopefully one day that their legs magically come up to their elbows. But in the process, they're basically trying a supra-maximal attempt lift for themselves every single day that they try it, and then
at the expense of their shoulders.
Right, exactly.
So you mentioned earlier observational studies of Olympic athletes. And this is a recurring theme through the tactical fitness world, is training like an elite athlete. And there are a couple different ways I personally take that. I have noticed in tactical training that a lot of beginners in the tactical world are trying to copy what they see Navy SEALs do. And the problem is they're not Navy SEALs. They ain't built like Navy SEALs. They don't have a fitness level like Navy SEAls. They don't have the same operational requirements that Navy SEALs do. They don't have to be able to float if they fall off the helicopter. They don't have to carry all the radio gear and batteries and stuff that a SEAL would. And so their kit wouldn't necessarily need to be laid out the same way. And I think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice when novices try to mimic elites. And I'd be interested to see if there's any research on a beginner marathoner trying to mimic an Olympic marathoner. And I don't know if you have a position on that, but I see a lot of parallels between that and the tactical community. So that's part one of that question. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Are there any studies on that? Not that I'm...
Or do you have a view of it or anything like that?
Right. I mean, I think they would have some issues with the IRB getting that approved to take a novice runner and have him run 100 miles a week. But there are... if you break it down, they do follow, good programs going to all follow the same principles. They're all going to have a base of easy running. They're all going to run multiple, different paces across. They're going to vary their paces essentially. So all the basic concepts will be there, just in a very much scaled back volume and intensity.
Yeah, and in the Air Force, I've seen a push to train Air Force pilots, quote unquote, like elite athletes, and which is. I'll take all the help I can get. I'll take all the physical trainers and gym equipment and nutritional supplements that I can get. That's awesome. But I have noticed, at least in flying, the difference between a really good landing and a really scary landing is sometimes like quarter of a centimeter of movement in the control surfaces, and in the not the control surfaces, but the controls themselves, the throttle and the stick, that sort of thing. And so it's funny to me to hear like train like an elite athlete, like my deadlift capability doesn't actually change how I control the airplane. And so I'd be interested to see if you had any advice for, in a tactical world, training people, quote unquote, like elite athletes. Is that a thing that you've looked into or have a position on?
So I think if we're talking about the overall ecosystem and how elite athletes are trained, I think there's a lot of value in that. You alluded to some of the resources that are afforded to especially the special operations community with having the recovery types of scenarios available, having the support staff to in multidisciplinary, whether it's the PTs, the strength coaches, the mental coaches, the nutritionists, the recovery specialists. So having all of those available to allow you to perform at your highest level relative to your own skill set. Basically being able to express your skill at the highest possible level, and it doesn't have to mean that because elite athlete doesn't have to mean we're all going to become high level Olympic lifters. We're all going to become elite level sprinters. Elite level performance can mean many different things, but there's definitely value in that, creating that ecosystem around the operator.
Right on.
Could see that. Just the general, all the expertise that comes to bear in creating that is probably good just for human performance in general, right? Like the way that I think about the way, we even teach people how to shoot. And I know shooting is like a sport, but it's like a sport in a different sense than we're talking like running and deadlifts, right? But it's not much different than even we've taken lessons in how we teach people how to apply a sport in that sense to even how they clear a house or make decisions in shoot, no shoot scenarios. I mean, just the way that we deal with coaching and feedback, I think probably plays into that on some level.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm going, and this is a tangent, right? Tactical tangent's what we do, but it's a thing I think a lot about, and a thing that a lot of our guests specialize in, right? You with your elite level athleticism. When we talked to Jason Sweet and Mike Loria, right? We've had a couple guests on who specialize in kind of this world, and the thing that I'm personally wrestling with is, where's the baby and where's the bathwater in this, right? Because there are absolutely some parts of the elite athlete training stuff that I think we do need to capture. And for pilots, a lot of it is how you move your eyes. I think that's really, really important. Is I have to move my eyes across the instrument panel and across the outside very, very quickly and collect that information and process it quickly, the OODA loop stuff, right? I need that a lot more than I need wind sprints with a parachute strapped to my back, right? And in the tactical telephone game, and as this stuff gets funded and briefed to the colonels and the generals and stuff, you'd be shocked, I think, how often it ends up being me doing wind sprints because we need to make pilots elite athletes. And I'm like, really?
I think there's maybe some difficulty separating athleticism from performance. Like performance, capital P, is not...
Human performance is not necessarily elite athleticism.
Physical fitness, in a sense. Because this is... And that's kind of where I was going with that, too, is if you look at Olympic athletes as an example, there's a big mental component to the training. I assume that I've never been an Olympic athlete, obviously. But there's a big mental component to a lot of the stuff that they do. The warrior within or whatever. There's a book, the Inner Game of Tennis, that talks a lot about like the way people learn. And if you're trying to coach someone, on their tennis stroke or whatever, or golf stroke, and how much you can give them to focus on at one time, and biting off little bits and pieces of that. It's like one of the things they talked about was how they've studied babies learning how to walk, or even just, standing themselves up and stuff like that. And there's an athleticism component to that. Sure, there's mechanics there, right? But there's also just the the learning part of them figuring it out on their own that maybe plays into that. I don't know.
Yeah,
So-
and some of this, in terms of the performance with, or this capital P or lowercase p, it's so where like the physical capacity piece would come in for, let's say a pilot. So, is running wind sprints with a parachute the answer? Probably not. But are there things that can be done to, give your body and ultimately mind the mental, and physical endurance to be able to perform at your highest level at the same as in hour one as in the last hour of a mission, or especially
Focus and attention, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And in my world of PT, in treating treating pilots, so many have just incredibly jacked up necks and shoulders because people don't realize how heavy
how much shit I have to wear on my head every day.
Yeah.
and
It's
all the
amazing.
and not only that, with like the vibration of having all that vibrating on your head and your neck, and I've treated some pilots. It's so I do what's called dry needling, where basically you stick like acupuncture needles into the muscles to help it relax, and their muscles will be so tight that it'll actually bend the needles bend metal just involuntarily. So
Sounds comfortable.
So there's so there's certainly a lot that can be done on the physical side, but it kind of goes to what you're saying about enhancing the skill component, and not, okay, we need to make everyone train like you're getting ready for NFL Combine or something.
So I had this discussion with my main coach, one of my favorite guys to work with at work, and I'm like, I don't need to look jacked to do what I do, and he's like, well, that's okay, Jim. You're a long way from looking jacked. So he's one of my favorite dudes.
It's true. So you mentioned the wearing all the stuff on your head thing, and this is something, again, I've alluded to this a couple times. We should probably get into it, but wearing kit all day, wearing a helmet with night vision a bunch, sitting in the car long term. There's a lot of chronic nagging type of injury, or just maybe it's not so much injury, it's just bad health. Can you speak to those that type of pain and what we can do about it?
So some of it is, there's another saying that the best posture is the one that you're not in. So being sensitive to the idea that it is important to move around as much as possible. Obviously, in Jim's world, he can't just necessarily pull over to the side of the
Pop up.
I do. I actually literally get out of the seat. I'm in the sort of airplane where I can stand up and walk around sometimes. And I literally do, I'll go do push-ups and stretch in the back, and then I'll come up and fly the plane. Planes fly themselves these days. That's what I tell people.
But there are certain vehicles where you can't ground, where you can't do that. But that's
Pull
that's
over and get out of the car for me, in my case.
right. And whether it's whether you're doing something tactical, or even if you're just sitting at a desk all day, you deal with same concept is vary your postures as much as as much as you can.
Get your steps in, take your kit off from time to time. We actually struggle sometimes, the medics on the team, when we're worried about heat stress. We're like, hey, get out of your kit, drink some water. And guys, oh, I'm fine, and it's like, I don't know, man. Being in that gear, especially if I'm sitting in sometimes we'll be doing these long-term surveillance operations where we're in unmarked cars, and we're going to end up doing the boogaloo thing and jump out and grab somebody. And I've got this rifle plate that's keeping me off the seat just a little bit, and I'm sitting in there for hours. And man, what I would give in times like that to just get out of my seat and bend over and do a couple squats and maybe take my gear off. That would be awesome. But yeah,
I think some of it too is kind of going back to that mobility piece that we talked about before, of the more mobility you have, the more you're able to sort of sacrifice. So is if you don't have any mobility and you're just kind of cramped into a space, then it's going to be more stressful on you than if you have the ability, if you have the range of motion to go in
in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And similar question, but kind of adjusting for aging. As you turn 30 or 40 or 50, do you need to change your routine? Is there anything that you can do to adapt to that and stay ahead of that as I get ready to turn 40 here soon?
I think the biggest thing with aging is that you just have less margin for error. When you're in your 20s, you can kind of get away without doing any of this stuff, any of the accessory work. One kind of rule of thumb that I've heard, and it seems to work pretty well, is for every decade of life, that's at least the number of days per week that you should be having a dedicated mobility session into your
I'm behind
into your training.
Damn.
But yeah, it's essentially you just can't get away with as much as you get older. I don't think the performance ceiling, I think we've found too, is that you can still have very high level performance into 40s and even into the 50s, but it's really that supportive aspect where you can't cut corners so much.
Yeah. Oh, I think I've mentioned this actually on the podcast before. I was talking to one of my docs on my first deployment, and I said, what are you seeing as far as injuries go for guys? Like, how are guys getting hurt? And he's like, Jim, every single one is like one of these old dudes, old Navy SEAL, old Ranger, whatever, who goes to the gym and he's got to keep up with the young guys, and he's trying to impress them. And then he, tears an ACL or blows out a rotator cuff or whatever. And he's like, they just, it's the personality is a big part of it. And, the sudden shock from going and, being a staff weenie and suddenly trying to be one of the jocks. Right. So.
Yeah, I tweaked my back moving my kid yesterday, and he's not even 2. So I think he's got to weigh like 25, 28 pounds, something like that. But
another important thing to remember in terms of the aging discussion is that the older you get and the more sort of mileage you get in the body, it's the less it takes to actually maintain a reasonable level of fitness. So it certainly takes a heck of a lot more to break new ground and set PRs. But if you've been working out for a long time and have been consistent with it, it really doesn't take a whole lot to just kind of stay at
active.
A decent level.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is, kind of not related but unrelated to that, I guess. But when you talk about taking 3 days, 4 days, 5 days a week, maybe dedicated to mobility, that can sound like a lot. It sounds like, well, how am I going to, that's basically a whole second workout now that I have to do. But to your point, I feel like those days that I do take extra time to I'm going to get some good stretching, some good, work out some of these kinks and stuff in my neck and my back, whatever. Man, you feel so much more productive throughout the day and better at work and better with all those things. I mean, it goes a long way in terms of actually being able to do any of that work.
Exactly. And it goes back to one of the first things we talked about with the difference between you're injured and sore, because just doing that mobility work and getting on the foam roller, for example, or the lacrosse ball, and it's a good inventory, a good check-in with yourself. And maybe you'll lay on the foam roller, you'll stick the lacrosse ball someplace, and you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize that's a little extra sore today. And so maybe you'll be either
lacrosse ball's really good at doing that.
and you'll be able to yeah, exactly, and be able to detect some of the day-to-day differences. And so maybe you can work that out before you get under the bar, as opposed to not doing any of it and then you don't find out until it's too late.
Yeah. We've talked about foam rolling, lacrosse ball. You mentioned dry needling. Jim mentioned chiropractors. There's a lot of ideas for rehab and treatment stuff. And it sounds like from what you've said so far is it all has a place. It all generally fits in. Is there anything in that realm, getting a massage or acupuncture, any of those things that are the science points to as probably not worth the time, money, and effort? Is there anything in there that you think probably is more snake oil? And I'm not talking about just the emotional, well, it feels good and it's relaxing. I mean, sure, I could see the value to that, but what things are people doing that is probably not worth their time and effort?
So I think they're all valuable. It's just a matter of is it fulfilling your intended purpose? is it, and everything works, but maybe not for the reasons we think it works. So it's hard to say because I want to talk bad about that anything at a context, but I will say even like the foam roller can get overused. Sometimes some people think, we've talked about the importance of getting on the foam roller, but there's some people that are too far the other extreme. It's like they can't do a workout without getting in their 30-minute session on the foam roller. And if we bring it into the tactical context, it's like, if the beeper goes off and you have a mission, you can't say, hold on, guys. I got.
I'm out.
Yeah, I got to go stop at
Hostage rescue has to wait. I need to go.
One of the weirdest things I've ever seen in the military was the proliferation of the massage. It's like a stick, massage stick, cane thing.
I've got like 3 of them laying around.
Yeah, they're great, and I use them. I like them. But they got really, really popular in the military. Guys took them overseas with them, and they're all over the briefing room. And I'm like sitting on the couch and like sit on one, and the guy'd be like, "Where's my massage stick?" And I'm like, "I think I just sat on it, dude." And like, went a little overboard. I'm just gonna say that.
I also saw a meme the other day, and this might be like the cover, for this episode, or at least one of them. But I saw a meme the other day of like someone working out at the gym, and it was just them like on a foam roller on their phone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoops, nailed it.
Yep.
They're like stretching out. They're like, hold on, I'm stretching, and it's on their phone and stuff. Like that's my morning routine.
Was it Isaac? It was Isaac, wasn't it?
I don't know. It might have been.
But I think in terms of, what works and what doesn't, I think in general, where people go wrong with any of the things that we mentioned, whether it's acupuncture, chiropractic, or any of those passive sort of treatments, it's just not pairing it with something active. So, for example, people go to the chiropractor and might say, go in and spend 2 minutes in there, get full spine adjusted, and just kind of stop and pop, and it's like, okay, you're good and good to go. But really, any sort of one of those treatments, it should open up a window of opportunity for you to kind of do the work that you need. So let's say you're going to chiropractor for your back. Okay, you get your back adjusted. Okay, you're feeling pretty good. Now this is the time that you go and you do some sort of exercise.
Keep it an adjustment.
Right, exactly. And so that's where people go wrong, is just relying on the passive modalities without pairing it with anything active to make the change long term.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I've been there where there was a window of time back in the day where I was doing the chiropractor thing a lot, like right after the police academy and stuff. And it was like, it's kind of a waste of time and money, because I would go do it and then my back would just be out of adjustment again the next time that I went. And so making sure that you're doing something like, okay, now I should try to strengthen what needs to be strengthened to keep it straight,
Exactly.
Keep it where it's supposed to be. That would go a long way.
Yeah.
Speaking of gimmicky stuff, my watch, in addition to having a GPS, also has like a pulse oximeter, and it has an app on my phone, and it makes a habit of telling me that I'm overreaching.
Mine makes espresso. It's awesome.
It has a habit of telling me that I'm overreaching on a regular basis, but it even tells me like, hey, you slept really good last night. You're ready to rock and roll. Your recovery's sped up.
My Garmin watch talks shit all the time. Every day it's like, you are overreaching. You're about to die. Why don't you sit down, fat guy? And I'm like, come on.
Literally every run that I go on, it tells me I'm overreaching. So that's probably
it does
a
not
sign.
like me. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that? Gimmicky, and Garmin, we tease about Garmin because that's just what I know. Jim has one, I've got one, but Apple Watch does it, Suunto does
Fitbit.
it. In general, what's the utility of all the stuff and the data that those things provide?
I think the data is great. I mean, it's great to have that information. I think I worry about people getting too caught up in the day-to-day without having a sense of the patterns. Because there are some times when you have your watch says, okay, you're overreaching, or you're red, or you're amber, or whatever for today. I mean, there's sometimes maybe that's not a bad thing, especially if in your world where you're not always going to be 100% when you have to show up on game day. And so being able to, there's some days where you do want to, you still have to get after it on those days. So it's I think people reading it strictly as, okay, green is good, red is bad. Yeah, it's important to. I like to have people gather the data and don't even look at it for at least 1 or 2, even 3 months, and then keep a log and with your subjective observations, and then after that point, then kind of dig into it and see what the patterns are, because the data is when they spit out the green or the amber, it's basically just going off their own algorithm, whereas we all have very unique individual lives and lifestyles and all respond very differently. So I think it's important to sort of pair it with that real world observation as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, and when it was new, the novelty of it, I was always looking at that stuff. And I think with time, I've looked at it less and less and less. And that's actually a good point, is I should go back now and look at kind of the
literal metadata, right? The long-term data.
Because we're kind of joking about it of saying, overreaching, but yeah, I've had this similar experience with, I don't have one of those devices right now, but I've used similar things in the past, and it's like, if I followed what the thing was telling me, then I'd never train. I'd be in bed. I'd be laying in bed every day,
resting for the next 36 hours. Yeah,
mine has, it's got a good balance. I feel like sometimes it'll suggest workouts and say, like, you should just do like a base run of 11-minute miles. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm going to run harder, and then overreaching. But it is still telling me to run, at least.
That brings up another thing too, especially out here in the desert, because your heart rate itself can be very misleading, simply because you're just going outside and 112 degree
sucks.
Right. It's going to get your heart rate up. It's going to
drink trip drop.
Yeah. So speaking of running, if someone comes to you and they're trying to be better about running, or they're just getting into running or back into running, they can only do one style or type of running. What is your kind of go-to? Should they be doing tempo runs, long and slow runs? Should they do intervals or hills? What's your kind of best bang for the buck running platform?
So I think that's all important. I'll get that out of it. But I think the best bang coming. The best bang for the buck is especially really for anyone is hills, especially like short hills. The thing I love about hills is that you almost can't do it wrong. So all of those things we talked about, like landing out in front of yourself with the heel strike or something like that. You almost can't do that in the hill. You'd fall. So the hill, and talking about teaching skill acquisition, all of that. It's basically the hill forces you into a position where your body reacts to the environmental constraint, and it forces you into a good leg kick, good leg drive, good as long as you're not hunched forward at the waist, good posture overall. And so
I really like that. The hill will teach you. It will teach you how to swear, but it will teach you. I like that.
Exactly. And so all things, you can teach people drills and all these things, but really just say, hey, go run up that hill. Certainly do it sensibly, and don't give yourself an Achilles problem. But watch
out for the downhill. That could be a getcha.
Yeah, and so a lot of times one of my favorite things for myself and to program for people is just doing like 10 to 30 second sort of hill. I won't call them sprints because they're not all out, but kind of with a good solid effort.
Yeah. I love hill workouts. Yeah. What about kettlebells? You're obviously big on kettlebells. I guess, where did that come from? You're the Kettlebell Doc on Instagram, and I imagine you probably use them in a lot of your programming for a good reason. Where did that come from, and what do you think people should turn towards in terms of programming that for themselves?
Yeah, so my interest in the kettlebell came when I was getting into the PT, the physical therapy world. Actually, a lot of the people I looked up to were very much into kettlebells, and were students of Pavel Tsatsouline, who brought the kettlebell from. He was credited with bringing the hardstyle kettlebell from Russia. I've worked with Pavel a few times over the years.
Nice.
And I think one of the things I love about the kettlebell is that, really just similar to what we talked about with the hill, the kettlebell teaches you so much. There's
Certain things don't lie. Toddlers, drunk people, yoga pants, kettlebells.
And the hills,
So
apparently.
yeah. And hills.
I remember back in the day when I was training to go into the Air Force and all that, and Jim was like, "You need to go buy some kettlebells," and I'm like, "What's a kettlebell?" And he's like, "It's basically a big cannonball with a handle on it." And I'm like, "That sounds awesome. I'm in for two." So that was my first foray into kettlebells.
Yeah, so we have listeners across the spectrum of fitness, right? And some may not even know what a kettlebell is, or like Chipotle, they call it like a kettleball, like Chipotle, whatever. So they might have seen one sitting in the gym, but may not know what it's called and may not know what the hell to do with it. So I want you to picture a cannonball with a handle on it, right? That's what we're talking about. It came from Mother Russia.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing the original ads for it. It's like, "This is Russian crazy fitness from the Russian Spetsnaz. Come take this and lift it over your head and you become strong like Russian bear. Haha." And I was like, cool, I'm in, whatever. And the PJs were into it and the combat controllers were into it. And I'm like, well, if they're jumping off a cliff, I'm going to jump off one too. So that was my introduction. And that's when I started telling Mike about it.
Yeah. But they're awesome. Like you can take them anywhere. And I think, jump in here where I get this wrong, but one of the things that I like about it is everything when you're lifting one of these things, it kind of forces you to involve those little stabilizer muscles that we were talking about earlier, because it's not just a straight bar or a balanced dumbbell. It's always kind of off, right? Like just the shape of it and the way you hold it, it kind of forces you to engage all of the little things that go with whatever lift you're doing, right? Am I getting that?
Yeah, and yeah, essentially, it doesn't even force you to engage; like engages the things, or else you drop it.
Yeah,
essentially. So yeah, absolutely.
Even grip strength, which is good for shooting.
Yeah, speaking of grip strength and Garmin watches, I recommend don't wear a watch when you're doing this, because you're going to flip it back onto your wrist, and you will learn. It will teach you.
Yeah, it's one of the most frustrating things. Like, how am I supposed to track my heart rate throughout my workout if I don't have a chest strap and I have to take my watch off? I don't understand.
Yeah, yep.
I won't have that pulse ox data. You know.
I know. What will I do if I don't have my pulse ox?
How will I survive my workout without being able to say how many calories I burned at the end of it? I don't understand.
Yeah, it won't count.
Yeah, it doesn't count. It literally.
And to kind of bring that full circle real quick, COVID, right? Last year or more, we haven't really been able to do a whole lot of gym work because of COVID, at least on military bases. A lot of the gyms have been shut down. That's one of the things about kettlebells, and I'm not selling kettlebells here. You can get one or two, and I defer to Kettlebell Doc as far as what size and shape and style to get, but you can get a couple of them. They don't take up a whole lot of space in your house. They're easier to find than a treadmill right now, and a hell of a lot cheaper. And then the kettlebell gym's always open. Right, so there's some real value there.
It's right next door to the burpee gym.
Damn Skippy. So can you talk us through like two or three, and it's hard to explain on a podcast, right? But can you talk us through two or three basic movements that will be value added, and what size kettlebell should I get if I go buy one?
Yeah, so for men, generally, if you could buy two, the 16 kilogram and the 24, which is 35 pounds and 53. If you are starting out with at least some experience in a stronger strength base, then you can add the 32 kilogram, which is 70 pounds in there. Then for ladies, 8, 12, and probably 16 is a good place to start. In terms of, which exercises, generally we'll start people with the Turkish get up and the swing. And in it, my best advice is find someone who knows what they're doing to help teach you. When I work with students, we'll literally start with grip and stance, just like with shooting, and we'll start with working on planks to get that alignment down. We'll work on some mobility to make sure you can actually get into the positions required for the Turkish get up, and then from there, your next progressions would kind of you can get into military pressing, squats, and then eventually get into the more your ballistic movements like your snatches and your cleans and push press and jerk and stuff like that. But generally, things start with with the get up and the swing. But also, I should mention the kettlebells are great for for loaded carries too. That's probably one of the simplest exercises you can do without needing any instruction. You pretty much just pick up the bell, Yep. Pick it up, walk, and keep good posture. If you have bilateral, so one bell in each hand at your side, kind of puts you in the right posture. If you're just doing single-sided, then you need to be attentive that you're not compensating and leaning over to one side to counterbalance the kettlebell. Otherwise, it kind of defeats the purpose of the exercise. And even just, to be honest, just holding the kettlebell, if you get it into what we call the rack position, where it's just you kind of you're holding it up against the side of your chest, just holding it there, it can be very very powerful as well.
The swing is one of those movements that a lot of exercise programs incorporate, doing kettlebell swings, and probably without enough attention given to the correct form. And to this day, on any given day, I'll pick up a kettlebell to do swings, and the next day you will feel it if your form is not proper. So spend some time, spend some time kind of studying on that, and don't go too heavy. Although I do think that having some weight behind it actually makes it easier to get good form. But I have noticed that, even as a guy that's been tossing kettlebells around for, I don't know, more than 15 years now, it'll get your back if you're not careful.
Yeah. Before my first certification that I went to, I actually had to delay it because I hurt my back, and it was just, kind of felt a little twinge, and probably should have stopped there. And kept going, and
we do.
Right, and six weeks later is when I finally started to feel good again. And so the biggest thing with the swing, and that you'll see is people arching the back too much instead of finishing straight up and down and using the hips and using the legs. And like you said, you'll feel it the day after, but you want to feel it in your hips and your legs and your even your lats, your glutes, but not the low back and the neck.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, one of my favorites for beginners, and correct me if I'm giving bad gouge here, is the goblet squat. So taking a kettlebell, holding it at your chest with both hands, and just squatting down, standing up, squat down, stand up, right? And especially if you are someone who's intimidated by gym work and doing leg day and trying to figure out how to do a deadlift without, tipping over or whatever, this will get you started. It will get the motion down and start building some strength and some stability, so that you are better at the other stuff, right? So that's one of my favorites, is the goblet squat.
Yeah, the nice thing about the goblet squat too is it's not just a leg exercise. You hold the bell in the right way. It forces that chest to open up, the upper back to get nice and tall, and even just standing there with the
Core
bell
engagement.
Yeah, exactly. The bell in the goblet position, and it's going back to the whole idea of the bell forcing you into the right position. It's you have that bell in front, and the bell is trying to kind of pull you forward into if you don't balance yourself, you're going to fall flat on your face. So what's the reaction or the solution is, okay, I have to engage my posterior or my backside muscles, my glutes and my hamstrings and back muscles to keep myself balanced without even thinking about it.
Well, those are all good tips. I think we should definitely give some time to let you talk about your project, the Kettlebell Doc. We've obviously been talking about the last few minutes here. What is your vision or your goal with the Kettlebell Doc and that whole project?
Yeah, so my mission is to help athletes and active adults overcome injury and get back to the workouts and sports that they love. And kind of what we talked about, it's bridging the gap, or connecting the worlds of fitness and performance rehabilitation into a way that's going to get people back to what they want to do and need to do as quickly and efficiently as possible. We talk mostly about stuff on the land. You also do some stuff in the water, which maybe could be another episode.
That's right. I was hoping we'd have time to get into that, but yeah, it's you've written a book on water confidence training, and that's something that it could be its own whole episode, I think.
We are passionate about it ourselves. Yeah. So we will, we might sequel with that.
But it was an honor to be on. I've listened to some of the past episodes and had some great guests, and it's certainly flattering that you asked me to be on here.
Absolutely. Well,
we appreciate having you.
If you're looking for coaching, programming, remember that Allan, the Kettlebell Doc, does not only so there's physical therapy and physical training, so both treatment, but also programming specific to your training program, both in injury prevention, but also if you're working through some injuries. So there's kind of the best of both worlds there. So go find him on Instagram. Is that the best way to connect with you or get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely.
Instagram at the Kettlebell Doc, and you'll find some links there, I imagine, for some other stuff. And is there any other last thoughts or anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground, and it was all great to talk with people who share the same passion that I do.
Yeah, swimming episode.
You brought some great insights. I really appreciate it. It's fitness is a journey, and the fewer times you fall off the cliff because you do something stupid and injure yourself, the better off you're going to be. Right,
and that's the key. Is it is not a linear path. You're never going to get serious about physical training without some little injuries and nagging things along the way. That's part of it, right? So yeah. I think this was a great follow up to the beginning, and we'll definitely need to follow up with some water work, because there's some mental components that we can build into that as well. So that'll be awesome. All right, guys. Well, this episode was brought to you by Right On Optics. Right On Optics is bringing you high-quality glass at a great value. I use and trust their scopes, binoculars, and red dot sights, and you can too with their unconditional lifetime warranty. If you ever have a problem with their gear, they will replace it, not repair it. Finish up your next build and keep a little extra cash on hand for ammo so you can actually go out and shoot that thing. You can find your next optic at rightonoptics.com.
This episode is also brought to you by Dry Fire Mag. Ammo is hard to find these days, and you need to stay proficient by working your dry fire training. Dry Fire Mag solves the common and annoying problem in dry fire of constantly having to rack the slide to reset the trigger. With a Dry Fire Mag, all you do is clear your weapon, load this magazine in, and get to work on your trigger work. Check them out at dryfiremag.com.
Don't forget that we put out new episodes on the 1st and the 15th of every month. If you like what we're doing, you can head over to Patreon, give us $1 for each new episode. That money's going to go back into bringing you good content. You can also interact with us on Facebook in our podcast discussion group. Go over to the group tabs on our page, and you can answer a couple questions to get in there. And you can also email info@tacticaltangents.com if that's your thing. That's all I got. Jim?
We're having a lot of fun on Facebook, just the General Tactical Tangents page on Facebook. Don't ever be scared to jump in on the comments. We're happy to talk to you there.
Yep.
And I want to plug the Patreon again. We do not have bodies for OnlyFans, so it is way better if you want to support us, jump on Patreon. It's an easy way to support the podcast, and also tell your friends about us. We have stickers. We'd love to send them to you. Just shoot us a message, and we'll try and get you some swag.
That's right.
That's all I got. Thanks.
Well, Allan, thanks again for being here, and guys, we hope that you'll be in touch. Good talk.
Thanks, Allan.
Thanks, guys.